name's Ben Harmon, I'm the Director of Stills, and really happy to have this exhibition on for the festival this year. And to have Peter Kennard and 𝗧𝗹𝗶𝗹𝗀 here to talk about work. I just wanted to really very briefly give a bit of background to the exhibition. We've been talking to Peter and 𝗧𝗹𝗶𝗹𝗀 for over a year. I think we started talking early last year about doing a project. And in terms of a kind of curatorial brief we gave to them, I think we left it quite open. When we started our conversation, we were just talking about everything that had happened and was about to happen, and this was pre-referendum, so there was an awful lot of potential material. And it turns out that the work they made kind of incorporates so many of the things we were talking about, from sort of local funding right through to sort of global austerity and climate change. But I'll let them talk about the work. The exhibition is a 𝗧𝗹𝗶𝗹𝗀 exhibition, Here Comes Everybody, but it's also a collaboration. It really is a collaboration with artist Scott Lang, who's down there somewhere. Scott keeps getting pointed at. Scott will be working with Peter and 𝗧𝗹𝗶𝗹𝗀 and 𝗧𝗹𝗹𝗀 in the James Shopping Centre. But more importantly, the collaboration will include everybody, the everybody in the title. It's people who make work in the War on War Room. So that work will be put back, added to the exhibition, so the exhibition will really evolve throughout the month of August. And I hope you can come back and see how it changes at various points. So I thought we would stand up today. We'll start in here and then perhaps move to the back room. And Peter and 𝗧𝗹𝗶𝗹𝗀 are really happy to be interrupted with questions, so by all means ask, and we'll try and make it a conversation. But just like to introduce 𝗧𝗹𝗶𝗹𝗀, Peter Kennard and 𝗧𝗹𝗶𝗹𝗀.
All right, I'm just going to start talking.
Go for it.
Please interrupt. I mean, this is an informal talk. We're not doing sort of PowerPoint and all that sort of thing. But what Ben was saying is the key aspect of it is that we've got the work here, and then in the St James Shopping Centre, which you all know, we've got a space, quite a good space for shop, which we put a printer and lots of material, lots of sort of photographic material, and tables, so that people are going to come in from different groups, different community groups in Edinburgh, which has been booked in, and work, some of them for a day, some of them for 2 days, and then the work they do is going to be put onto the structures, onto the walls in this gallery. So it is very much, when it's called Here Comes Everybody, that is very much about what the exhibition's about. So these are like the beginnings of what the show will look like in a month. And there are also open days which people can book up for and come and make work themselves. So it's that sort of, trying to get that sort of feeling of the thing being not a finished object, but is about participation, which feels like what Scotland's been at for the last year or more, is actually people suddenly participate in the political process, which has certainly not happened in the same way in England. Although now with the Labour Party, with Jeremy Corbyn standing, we're all joining the Labour Party, which is for the first time ever, which is a little bit of activism that's happening at the moment. So we wanted to make a show that had that sense of movement, of structure, something that wasn't finished, but very much make an installation, because I think we see it as totally as an installation.
Not as individual pieces of work spread across various walls, but as one complete installation. And I think that will be much more apparent when we reach the end of August and at the end of the War on War Room workshops. And I mean, the challenge for us was to try and conceive of an installation to start with that would be able to handle developments from other works and unknown artists as well. So that's I mean, we see that very much as quite a big challenge, and it's going to be a challenge to make it into an installation that still works as a total work with all these various inputs and different knowledge and different intents in the works. Because the way we run the War on workshops is basically we set up our own studio. So we bring all of the equipment and materials that we have in our studio, and then all we do is introduce people to how we make work, and we show, obviously they see some of our work as well, but it's very much to be self-led by them, so they end up making and conceiving works of their own direction. And we facilitate, you know, just with on a technical level or encouragement or whatever is asked for. So there'll be a lot of different influences in this space by the end of August. And the challenge is to see whether it's possible to conceive of a successful work with all of that different input. So it's going to be an interesting month.
Kat, could you say, or Peter, a bit about the materials and the sort of creative process behind what's in here, which might not be as obvious to some people as to others?
Well, I mean, we very much make work for a public audience, so it's very important to us that it's not very mysterious how we make the work. So we always opt to use very familiar materials. So the materials of all the image in this gallery at the moment that we've made is all on newsprint, which is familiar. Some of it's actually directly onto newspapers, like this piece here, and the prints that are clipped up there on the sticks. Some of it onto blank newsprint. And then the structures, I mean, it's also to do with cost, you know. So the pallets are all pallets that we've dragged off the streets here and in London. We brought some of them up. And they're everywhere, you know, they're a very much present part of our urban life anywhere in the UK. And the newspapers, well, we either collect real newspapers or we get end of rolls from printers that print the newspapers, and they end up with a large amount of paper on a roll which they can't use because it would run out, just maybe, I don't know, not enough copies. And they recycle them all, so we can just collect those from them. So it's a lot of free materials and very familiar materials. And then the way we construct it is with clamps. It's a very quick and easy way to construct, and you can move things around very easily, you know, change structures. So experiment with the shape of the structure.
And I think one of the original ideas was, well, we were thinking of the all these horrendous towers that are taking over London, like the Cheese Grater and the Shard and the Apple Fixer, or whatever they call all the crap things that are going up. But yeah, Gherkin, yeah. And there's another 160 that have got planning permission that are supposed to be. So they're going up randomly. And this idea of a tower took us into this sort of object, which is a tower of pallets. I think one of the things about this exhibition is you get a lot of installations now, obviously, so, you know, a very big form of art, but a lot of the installations are just immersive, quite theatrical experiences of one thing. And I think we wanted to actually have find a way to combine imagery, two-dimensional imagery, with three-dimensional objects, but not create sculptures out of them. So they are more like stacks, going from a very much a solid stack, and this one's a bit more broken, then you go down and you do get a sort of city of pallets. And it's this idea that they're functional. Yeah, the thing has a sort of functional feel about it. It's quite important that it's not just something that you might see on a stage or whatever.
Yeah, and they're going to.
What about the actual image? Is that a collage or is that somehow a print?
This is well, it is. It's like the basis is photo montage. So the concept of bringing two images together.
That's to be physically stuck on, or?
This is just, it's a single piece of paper that's been printed on both sides. So it's double-sided print. So we printed on one side, turned it over and printed on the other side. And then we've deteriorated it so that the image on the back here, you know, the paper collapses and pulls forward to show the image on the back.
So you thread a piece of newsprint through the printer.
Yes.
I mean, the newsprint goes through the printer in exactly the same way as any other paper.
Did you edit the montage like on a computer before printing it? Or is it?
No, it's just two straight, well, I mean, so the top print is a €200 note,
Yeah.
and so that's we scanned. That's actually quite a difficult thing to do, to get a image file of a.
They don't want you to have one.
No.
No, there's a lot of mechanisms built into the
Cat
technology
scans a lot of
that-
banknotes. Go and see her afterwards if you want advice.
Yes, so the top print is just it's a straight image file of the €200 note, and the back print is a straight photograph from a demonstration in Spain, an anti-austerity demonstration.
Have you painted too?
Not on that, no. We have on other works in the past combined paint and print of photographs, but not on this one. So what it is it's the image behind, because the paper is so thin, it's seeping through. And in the past we've tried things like making a print but sticking it down back, you know, reversed, so it's blank on the back, and then applying oil and linseed, sort of wax, and it makes the image start to appear through it more clearly.
And I think that's the sort of key thing of all this work. There's sort of it's about transience and it's about change. So it's not like solid material. It's not like painting it on canvas or whatever. There is that sense of, you know, the world is in
Do you expect all that
change.
to disappear quite soon?
What, this?
Yes.
No, not at all. So the inks that are used in the
What,
printing
physically?
we use-
Yes.
No.
No, the inks that we use are pigment inks, but they're, I mean, they're just the standard inks that Epson puts in those printers, but they're all very gung-ho about their longevity, so they say it's, and in our times, if we were printing on newsprint, the ink never fades, but the newsprint, if it's not treated, will start to go brown. And you can see that in some of the material that we've got in the wall, you can see where untreated newsprint prints that we've got up have started to
Could you
get.
varnish it or something?
I think the sheen on that is just the glue that we've used to stick all the paper together, but we do coat it with UV gel to protect it if we want to preserve it.
And bits do fall off. I mean, we showed some in Dresden a couple of months ago, and we got back a lot of plastic envelopes in the conservator there with little bits that have fallen off and a description of where they come from. So that's part of the work. There is that sort of process going on.
Yeah, with it falling apart. And I mean, it makes, I mean, this is actually, it's very strong. It's just sheets of newspaper all glued together. And then the top the top layer is printed on, or it's two layers that are
That's
printed
the
on.
papier-mâché.
Yeah, it is. It's very basic. But it's fragile as well, so bits do fall off. And there's something about that seems very real somehow. I don't know. I mean, people object to using the word real, but it's, you know, there's something very fragile about the human condition, and yet it's so resilient as well. And I think that reflects in some of these large paper pieces that we make.
Yeah. And then the actual, like say that one with the staples, it just came about through stapling images onto the palettes about, you know, the results of austerity, basically, and the poverty that's around. And then seeing that the staples themselves created a sort of, were quite violent in, you know, the way that they're going through it, rather than to try and make an expressionistic image to keep it sort of factual in that sense.
I see.
You know. And then down here,
Yeah, should we
move
move
down? Yeah.
Work, yeah, so the work from War is going to be coming in and being incorporated. I mean, I don't like the word added to the show,
Yeah.
but it's going to be incorporated, and the show's going to develop around what work comes in, really. So we've got an awful lot of material that we haven't put up yet, but there'll be a build-up of work from the War Room, and the first manifestation of that is Scott's work.
Hello. Yeah, well, my work's kind of more kind of local based, coming from Glasgow, a housing scheme in Glasgow. I'm more looking at the issues concerning there. And one of the big things in the housing schemes in Glasgow is the gang culture. It's so within everyone in the other schemes, the housing schemes. It's almost a kind of rites of passage for the young guys to kind of go through this process of joining gangs, and some of them actually don't get out of it. I know guys kind of my own age that were involved at the same time as myself that are still kind of involved in that way, and it's just natural for them. They don't ever kind of grow out of that. So that's kind of what I've been exploring through my work. But again, all of the stenciled images here were created using photo montage and then translated into stencils. So the way that I layer up the stencils as well is almost like photo montage as well, trying to tell a story in a different way by layering up the images. Yeah, and I'm kind of looking at the stereotypes associated with kind of the gang members and the gang culture as well. And a bit about my own kind of background is in there as well.
Can you point out some of the different elements?
Yeah.
And where do you want to come? Let's see.
Well, the kind of bottom pieces here as well are done in the colours of Rangers and Celtic, because that's how the gangs kind of started in Glasgow. It was all through kind of sectarianism and the football firm. So that's kind of reflected in these bottom pieces here by the colours that I've chose here. And
There's a lot of, I mean, the landscape is all from, I mean, that's all photographic.
yeah, some of that's my own photos actually. The ones of the high flats here is an area that I used to live in. It's photographs that I've taken myself combined with images that I've found on the internet as well. And same with the kind of castle here, that's again from the area of Glasgow that I'm from. So it's very much kind of personal to me, but kind of connects with the whole mentality in housing schemes really. And that's a kind of big concern, because, as I said, a lot of people don't actually find their way back out of it again. And yeah, it can be quite damaging to people as well, because there's associated kind of drinking culture and substance abuse that kind of goes hand in hand with that, and it's almost seen as kind of competitive. The more that you can drink, the cooler you are, and it's just,
culture.
Yeah, that no mean city image is kind of stuck with Glasgow, and and finding it really hard to shake it off.
Is it just the male culture, or is it?
No. Girls do get involved as well, and actually kind of can be more violent than the males. But it is predominantly the young guys. And yeah, there's a bit here about kind of my own story and kind of the effects of gang culture that it had on my life, which kind of led to mental health issues as well, which is kind of on the top panel here. But if it hadn't been for that, I probably wouldn't be doing art again. So yeah, it's a kind of mixed feeling about it. Obviously, it was a low point in my life, but good things have kind of come out of it, and that kind of forced me to reflect on my own life and my own background and where I came from and things that I've done. So that's what led me to kind of explore this area in my work.
And projectability was one of the points.
Yeah, Projectability is a mental health organisation. It's kind of art therapy in Glasgow, and after my psychotic episode, that was a kind of starting point for me, kind of getting back into art again as a form of therapy. And from there, it kind of led to me going back to college and getting my degree. Just graduated last month, and yeah, it's led to bigger and better things eventually, but it was a long journey.
And you've got a show there.
I've got a show at Project Ability just now as well, yeah, running until the 29th of August.
There's some flyers for it downstairs as well.
Yeah. And again, this is going to evolve throughout the month as well. Hopefully some of the participants in the workshops will be interested in doing stencil work as well, and yeah, and hopefully incorporate it all into these pieces as well, or maybe even expand this area a little.
Yeah, definitely. And there definitely will be interest in spray paints as well.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll make some more work myself to kind of go on here as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, well, it's difficult to describe because the work's so direct. So it's quite strange to say that one's done that when it doesn't come through, then we've got a problem. But I mean, I suppose the idea is that when you come in the gallery, you have there's a certain, I don't know if it's ambiguity, but you can't quite work out maybe what the images are about, and that as you come through, it does get very direct, as you can see. And then when you go down the stairs, there's two videos showing. There's one which we did for Greenpeace a few months ago, a couple of months ago, which that image of Christina's world is one of the images we did for it. And it's about the shell drilling in the Arctic. It's a campaigning video against shell drilling, Wentbush drilling in the Arctic. And so we took that's a very iconic picture from the States. It's like the sort of Hey Wayne for the English is the Christina's World by Andrew White. And then as you can see, we covered the landscape in oil and the power stations in the background. So that image ties in with a video that's downstairs. And then at the bottom there's a video of, we did the sort of lecture, demonstration, action, performance thing last year at Summerhall during the festival, which was a sort of rehearsal or going through different processes of making work for this show. So it was like the R&D for this exhibition, and it was filmed by Christian Boos, and there's a video down on the ground floor of that. And there's also some framed images, which are some work we did for a John Pilger documentary. It wasn't in fact used in the end, but it's a documentary about, it's called The War You Didn't See, and it's about how the media was completely manipulated by the army and by the governments involved in Iraq, in bombing in Iraq, and we made a series of pictures about it. So they're framed, and we put them in. I think one of the reasons we put them in is they're made very directly. Most of them are just printed on A4. Most of the images are off the internet, and they're printed on an A4 home printer and then cut up. So those are rough images. You can see that they're just cut with a blade. So again, this thing of showing the sort of access. You know, one of the things about art is it always seems distant and smooth and not part of people's own experience in that way. I think all our stuff's about.
Yeah, we did our very first collaborative series that we made together. It was first shown in, and it was work about Iraq, and it was, I think, we made it through 2003 and 2004, and it was a series of prints, and then we used scanners and were scanning material and mixing that with photos. But it ended up with a print that was then framed in oak frames, quite big, behind glass as normal, and it was the process of making the work was incredibly visceral and disturbing, but the actual final result, although I'm still very pleased with the work, it hung in the gallery, it was so removed, And I think from that point onwards, everything we've been doing since then has been attempting to lower the distance of experience between the photographic imagery that we're using in the work and our experience as a removed audience, you know, from these wars that we were trying to make work about.
I have a question kind of regarding this. I saw your show at the summer hall last year, and I think it's very effective the way, especially particularly on newspaper, how you get close to the audience in general. But I want to know if you guys ever worry about, because obviously you do get close to people, but the issues that you're talking about are so deep and they're so intrinsic in our society in general. Like, do you actually think about how these sort of works could stay for posterity, for people to talk about this in 50 years' time or in 20 years' time, when I don't know how the future is going to be, obviously, but you know, it's very likely that some of these things would still be going on, and if people would be discussing your work, like the impact of that in the future, like because it's in the sort of material that is very fragile, and because yeah, exactly, not just because it might deteriorate, but because it's meant to be recycled in a way. And so, do you ever consider that, or do you wonder about that? How it would be for posterity?
You mean thinking about making the work more robust so that it can actually live on?
Yeah.
I think I'm very much the opposite, though. I mean, I think I don't, because although I value what we make very much, and it's hugely important for me that it gets seen and disseminated, I think I'm also very disrespectful of it lasting as an object in itself, because I suppose I feel that the things that we're trying to address in our practice are completely current and active, and I suppose my belief is that almost anything made about current active moment is kind of, I mean, it's useful to see the techniques used for artists and practice going on in the future, but the actual work itself, I feel, has to keep moving. It has to keep moving, and it has to keep being rethought. And that in a way, that it's no problem for me at all making a new installation that incorporates some works that we've made maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago, because they become part of the next body and the next wave of movement. But I don't think I do have a great concern of preserving any individual piece. Not that they're not preservable, you know, I mean, the newspaper issue isn't actually an issue in terms of it lasting 50, 100 years, maybe I don't know, but 50 years certainly it can last. But I think actually I don't have a great need to. What do you think?
Well, also, something like this is completely collaborative with the amazing people that work at stills, you know. So it's not like it's a sort of, it's a process that stopped at this point, and then everyone here has been involved in it. It's part of it. So
I just but process is
the process.
almost more important than the result.
So hopefully Stills will say, well, we're going to store this work forever and put it up. They've been involved in the making of it.
I suppose that also, in a way, because you're making it so much work all the time, like it almost becomes a constant. In a way, like it's a work that exists forever. You know, like as long as you guys live and you still produce, it's like one work that goes on and grows.
I think that's.
And it's not looking back in the terms of history painting, you know, 20 years later, because all the Iraq stuff from then on, it was always as it was happening, and a way to express to ourselves, you know, the anger about this horrendous bombing and destruction that was going on. You know, it's a sort of privilege you've got as an artist that you can express it. So it seems like it's something that one should do, you know. It's just put it down in different ways, and then, you know, whether it lasts or not, I don't think that's that important. I mean, you know, but it does last in terms of images now, because we've got the internet and everything. So in that way, you know.
Well, obviously the objects themselves have much more power than seeing it
Yeah.
post on the internet.
Your work has been collected by museums. How do you feel about that? Do you see it as, in a way, you're sort of infiltrating those collections with work that's quite charged? And is that a good sort of visibility for you? How do you feel about somewhere like the National Portrait Gallery collecting a piece of your work?
I mean, for us, it's all about public visibility. So, in a museum collection is as fantastic as us doing something in the street that gets well seen. So we're definitely not anti-gallery or anti-establishment museum location, and because they exist, you know, they are public spaces still. So I think it'd be different if Deutsche Bank wanted to collect a piece that was then only going to be visible in one of these glass steel towers for a very exclusive audience. I think that would be different, and that's not a problem we've had yet.
But maybe that would change their minds.
Infiltration, I was talking about.
Well, I mean, I definitely think I've felt that some curators at very establishment art institutions, so museums or things that have the big public purse and therefore all the bureaucracy, I felt that our work has sometimes been useful to people working within those institutions in the sense that they can use an acquisition to express their, you know, so it's a form of solidarity, I suppose, and allowing to make something that can then tangibly be in solidarity with workers in those institutions that, you know, have a need to push their opinion as well.
Yeah.
So I see it like that. But right now, I would find that extraordinary if there was someone in Deutsche Bank that, you know, had a real need to challenge, but then who am I to say that? You know, I'm very, very distant from that world, so I don't, you know, really have much of insight. I'd love to.
It's great when it does. I mean, like some of these papers were bought by the V&A cost, but and then they were shown in their acquisition, so it had pieces of pottery and stuff, the stuff they bought, and then 4 of these images, which is, you know, to show it in that context is a really rich thing. You get hundreds of people go through, and it's this is about showing the root of our economic world, isn't it? You know, where it's coming from, the world to the West. So it's important if you can get into that context to do it.
And we did originally show this as a market stall in Leadenhall Market, which is right in the financial heart of London. So there's this, what's called the square mile around it. And it was in amongst these stalls that are there for the banking sector or the financial sector workers where they have their lunch. And this was set up, and it was set up with the intention to create a debate around around poverty and the massive exploitation of workers that the traders are all obviously, and the investment funds are all part of. And it was really notable that the thing that disturbed any of those workers that engaged with us was the fact that we were there but we weren't selling anything. And that was really disturbing. So it really hit me how it's like money's become like this it's their only way of relating in a way, even on their just daily like person to person level. And I think that's really a fact. You know, I think there's a large part of us as societies now in the West that have this necessity for some financial component, you know, to for us to understand certain conversations, which is a problem, I think.
So how do you live? I don't sell anything. How do you...
I didn't say we don't sell anything, but at this setup that we did in Leadenhall Market, there was nothing to sell. There was very much just to look at, and that didn't compute for the people that were regular there. But how do we live? Well, for a long time I've been a printer, and the majority of people that I was printing for were photographers who were primarily working for NGO. Well, what I was printing for them was exhibition material for collaborations they were doing with NGOs. That's gone on the slide a bit since, I suppose, 5 or 6 years ago. And I think it has to do with budgets, that NGOs don't have the budgets for doing the educational programs that they were doing before. So struggling along, but and Peter's at
I play the stock market. No, I mean, I've been very lucky that I've had a. When I left college, I did all different sort of jobs, even telephone operator. Believe it, putting people off. But I've been teaching for 30 years, half time, and that's how so many artists have managed to live, is half time teaching, and it's been enough to live on, have a studio, bring up kids and all that. But that is not possible now in the same way for young students leaving college, where every element of, they're coming out with a debt. I mean, when I went to college, I had a grant and all that, so it's so tough now. But like a 3-day-a-week teaching job has allowed me to do work that doesn't obviously make much money. It's not saleable, and it's a freedom, because then you don't have a gallery saying, "Well, do a bit more of that one because it's a good line for sales," and they do that to people.
Yeah.
You talked about the freedom of an artist to express your protest, your anger. And something I've been looking at a lot recently is the correlation between protest and artwork and other forms of popular art. And I keep coming across people who say, no, even people that believe right, say, no, we don't need protest, people need protest, which is political.
Yeah.
I wondered how, because you were saying, this that you did wasn't as a result of protest, you did it and you created it, So I wondered how you see the two, how they fit together, popular protest and people like yourselves or other artists in different genres, how you see them together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of the work that we do has, like, say, do some Greenpeace. We did a lot of our work by Stop the War, but we made the work and then Stop the War took it up after. And I think it's to do with what's happening in society. I mean, I agree with what Billy Bragg, that art itself doesn't change the world, but it's art allied to social movements. But the important thing is to, for us, I think, is to create something that invokes a sort of criticality about what's going on, so that people will then think about it themselves, and they might do something about it, join something or go on a march. So there's that aspect.
Yeah, but I think our inspiration is very much, it's about trying to make a process, and this is how we do it in a way. I mean, we do go on demos, and we do Stop the War conferences and things like that. But my main mode to demonstrate is actually to make a piece of work. And it's always trying to battle to make it a work that actually, does, cause some rupture in whatever the status quo is or whatever the main line that the media are putting out about whatever subject. If I disagree with it, or if I can see that's outrageous, that's easily labelled as propaganda, and then with photo montage, it's brilliant if that's what you're trying to go for, because it's so reproducible. So if you hit kind of gold, as it were, then the papers can run with it, you know, so it can even go into the same place, so it can go into the media that you're trying to make a criticism of.
Can I ask you when you're talking there about the way that photomontage can kind of move really swiftly and fast, I mean, I suppose what really interests me about where you're working just now is this kind of tension between that concision, you know, that photomontage kind of arose as a way of, you know, layering information really, really quickly and inventing a visual way of talking that wasn't there. So there's that kind of really fast aspect about how quick the image is, but also there's this really slow, layered way that you're working at the moment, for example, talking about that period of research, or just even physically how these things look, which is kind of sheets and sheets of information and masses of data. I wonder if you can talk a wee bit about the tension between these two things, the kind of speedy thing and the slow thing.
I think both are essential in what we're trying to do. I suppose maybe the photomontage elements like the bullet. No, that's horrible. I'm always trying never to like use the same kind of military, but it's like, I don't know, the slow part is really important to me.
Because it seems to me that, for me, it feels that some of this is about this absolute deluge of information and how difficult it is to navigate how scary some of these subjects really are, how easy it is to feel kind of overwhelmed, and you're sort of pushing in both directions. So actually we can navigate it, we can contain it, we can turn it.
Maybe not contain it, but I think we can navigate it, and I think there's a hell of a lot of effort made by mainstream media to prove to us that we can't navigate it, you know, and really, really shit scare us. And I think at the end of the day, life is simple, you know, I mean, I know that the systems that that are across the globe now are incredibly complex, but really on a human level, life is simple, and that's the case the world over and in every walk of life. So maybe the slow element is more about bringing us back, you know, down to ground level and less like hyper-theoretical, oh my God, you know, ISIS, whatever, you know, Ebola, everything's. And then maybe the montage, because the montage, it's really hard to come up with a montage that really cinches anything. Quite rare. I mean, we can make loads of montages, but not, you know, the majority of them don't really hit home on a particular subject. But we always keep trying, and the trying is sifting through tons of mostly image material, but sometimes also written material, just trying to get what's the missing bit that no one's talking about in the media. Where's the lost angle?
Yeah, the photo or image, you know, is one that's, I've said before, it sort of has a life of its own in a way. Is that one that you arrived at through a very slow and long process of sifting?
A very long process.
And is that one that you would regard as a successful example?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just by its own, like you say, it's got a life of its own. It keeps on cropping up, keeps on being given new context by the media or by the public, keeps on travelling to different parts of the globe and popping up, connected with different issues. And so it's brilliant, you know. And I suppose that's definitely a signifier that montage has got a very important role to play, and to keep attempting at it. Yeah.
But you can't sit down and say, I'm going to do one that's the thing, and wait for 15 years before one comes along that seems to sum up. I mean, for people, I think that sums up Blair in a very simple, direct way.
But also goes beyond that. It sort of hit on something,
About
some public level about a public view of government and policy and how it disconnects from.
Are you guys ever sued?
been sued. No, I haven't been.
Looking forward to Bring it on.
I was wondering who would dare.
Yeah.
That makes me feel very mighty. But it's interesting, I was thinking with crowdfunding and everything, I was thinking it's going to be amazing for a legal case to be backed by a crowdfunding scheme, you know, a defence case, which I guess will happen at some point with someone. Because there's so many legal cases that are just about setting an agenda, an ideology agenda, like this squatting being made into a criminal offence. I don't know if that's the case in Scotland, but in England, squatting has now become criminal, so that if you occupy a building, you're not facing just eviction and being moved on. You're facing a criminal charge and a jail sentence. And I remember the guy that they used as the example, and he got quite a hefty prison sentence. So just after they brought it in, and I thought it was very interesting to. I mean, I know that legal battles aren't just about how much money is behind you, but it'd be interesting to see what would happen if crowdfunding went into legal areas as well as all the brilliant areas it's going into already.
Have your images been censored, would you say? You've had problems with...
Well, that photo op one of Blair, there was a problem with it for the Imperial War Museum North in Manchester, where they had an exhibition of their contemporary collection, the title of which I can't remember. But they wanted to use photo op as the promotional image on their street posters, and they had it booked out for bus shelters in the streets of Manchester. And the advertising companies that own the bus shelters, or own the ad space actually, all the street ad space, whether it's transport or roadside, I think nearly all of that ad space right across the UK is owned by private companies, some of which are, so the ones they had a problem with was an American CBS, who were connected with the news channel, the media group. And it came to it that they, plus 𝗧𝗹𝗸𝗀, which is another big one, and there was one other, Clear Channel, I think it was, and all three of them censored the work. So the Imperial War Museum couldn't use the artwork, they couldn't put up their promotional poster for that exhibition. And I was just really shocked at the time, because it was my first discovery that it didn't contravene any British transport laws, that image. So it was 100% a decision by three private companies that this image was not allowed to go up in public space in the streets of Manchester. And I was just very shocked that they had more say than, or that there was a setup, it's not called a system, but that the lay of the land in that area of advertising, the corporate private company had more control than the legal system of the country, which I'm sure is 1 billion times worse in other countries. But you always think of the UK as being this great democratic nation, and it's just shocking when you find out all the new bits that you didn't know about yet. So yeah, that was a censorship issue that was quite recent and was quite big. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There was talk when it first went up in Oxford Street that that was in 2000.
Number 10 was trying to ban it, but I think that was bollocks.
I think that was Evening Standard.
Trying to make a bit of news.
We're dead on 2 o'clock and everyone's been very patiently standing.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Kat, you said a bit about you wanting to kind of close the gap of make people experience something.
Well, and also myself, I think.
Yes, yeah, and that's important, and that's quite clear from the kind of rawness of the work as well. And I just wondered if you could say a little bit more about why you think that's particularly important just now. especially when everybody's been told digitalisation solves everything. You know, you can do montage on screen, you don't have to have the material there, and so much is seen through screens as well. Why do you think that is so important at this particular moment?
Well, maybe because technology is more than it's ever been before. And we're physical, you know, I mean, we're physical animals, you know, so, I mean, the physical environment is what we inhabit, and it's, when it comes down to it, when it comes down to actual essentials like food, housing, all those things are physical. War, like threat, violence, that's all physical. And I don't think that we'll ever be able to understand those aspects of our lives as much on screen as we can within a physical environment. Because, I mean, it's not until you experience, I don't know, extreme hunger or extreme cold, I mean, those are all real things. So, I mean, I suppose it's the virtual environment feels a very important and very potentially democratic place, but it's theoretical compared to physical. It's more theoretical. What do you think?
I mean, also I think one thing that's happened with political stuff there's a lot of material advertising, say in March, it comes out on the internet, and so the people that see it are people who are in the know, whereas before when you've got posters and things, that you come across it. And I think that's still really important, the physical coming across of things, which on the internet, I know we can navigate anywhere, but you've got to know, what, you know, you do tend to know a bit where you're going. So actual having physical material is
on the street
and in, you know, I mean in galleries, I think it's really important that not everything becomes, you know, DVDs and videos and smooth images, because it's that sort of grittiness that is accessible. I think, you know, the sort of physicality is an accessible thing. Whereas the very smooth, professional-looking stuff, it has got that removed. You know, people think I can't do that. That's, you know.
That's really interesting what you say about the internet ones, and maybe it's more and more so as the technology gets more and more intelligent or more developed, that we are seeing things that were kind of grouped, or one's social media. I mean, I don't actually use social media, so I'm pretty ignorant about it, but maybe it is that one gets information according to one's interests, more and more so. Whereas, like you say, if something's in the street or in a public physical space, and putting this thing in Leadenhall Market, that was certainly...
That's fascinating that they were interested in what was for sale.
Yeah, and they were scared, and that they were actually nervous when they established that there was nothing for sale.
Yeah.
But that was a frightening thing. Or a challenge, you know, it was more than a challenge. There was a sort of anxiety that suddenly arose.
Yeah, well, I think it's a lot of emphasis on will it sell generally, and that's all that really matters. Will it sell? Not what use might it be, or as you said, you know, how people might think about things. And it's certainly true about the internet. It's only as good as the stuff that's put up there, and that's pretty highly bound, largely. It's not that there isn't dissent, but a lot of it, the dominant of it, is to reinforce precisely the values. That it couldn't be other than it is.
But I mean, the other thing I was just saying, I mean, in terms of a gallery, like, this is great, this street, especially during the festival, there's tons of tourists, so hopefully people, you know, someone will come in here and there will be a surprise and they won't quite know how to articulate it, or, you know, and ideas will start coming through. I mean, that's always the best, and I think that does happen through that physical engagement with this stuff. You know, that's really important.
And also, it's also the DIY thing, making it very clear that there's very little that we're doing. I mean, obviously, there's the imagery, but the imagery is all from the press, so there's a real DIY element of and an acknowledgement that anyone can do this, and it's not.
And also the shocks to it, because I keep looking at Scott's work there with this one in the middle here, and it's great. There's a juxtaposition that's just come about through having these different words together. You know, something that's really exciting.
Been very patient with us. Very kind.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions?
Often your work has quite a direct message that aligns with your own personal views. But you're working with the war on murder. Do you have any concerns about, by bringing in such a range of other people's work, it could dilute it or even contradict the message?
Well, I'm very aware that that's a possibility, but in a way that's what I'm really interested in, seeing what happens, you know, if you provide a space where everybody has access to input. And I think that's really what the work's going to be, you know, that conversation and negotiation and what happens when that's allowed. So I'm looking forward to it. And we, like I said, we very much don't set an agenda for the subject of the work as much as we possibly can. I mean, obviously we show people our work so it sometimes influences or heads people in a certain direction, but that's not the intention. The intention is just to show how to make works with newspaper and images and collage and collage.
So there's no sort of editing from what's made in the War on War room, other than perhaps gauging the quantity, because there could be a phenomenal amount of work.
Yeah,
Oh,
we might
coming in.
have to limit it to one person or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, no,
I don't think so.
or have a way to show a lot of stuff constantly.
Well,
Yeah.
we made these very rickety. It's about, so there's these and there's the idea of I mean, when we were developing, making structures out of pallets, we were putting a lot of imagery up them and through them and in between and coming off bits of wood. So there's a lot of ways to incorporate a lot of imagery, or a lot of material. But yeah, there's no editing, but there will be laying out. What is that called? Curating? I don't know. But, and we're hoping that the people whose work, the artists that make work, will be part of that process as well. So developing the whole, well, as it develops, that develops in collaboration. Also, how it looks in the end in the gallery. We've got the idea to connect towers as well, like across the air there, you know, like losing the vocabulary, but making a wire or a bar of wood connect two structures and have work coming down as well. We'll see.
In a month's time, it'll be transformed.